The information shared on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. While we discuss topics related to mental health, well-being, and emotional support, we are not providing therapy or medical services. Always seek the advice of your physician, psychologist, psychiatrist, or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a mental health condition. If you are in crisis, feeling unsafe, or need immediate support, please contact a mental health professional or emergency services in your area. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations or institutions.
Get inspired, get motivated with M.A.Y.A and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find M.A.Y.A on Twitter and Instagram at M.A.Y.A_Akai. On Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything M.A.Y.A at M.A.Y.A_Akai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 89 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. And this show is building just like all the other shows because this is about families. We've talked about the economy of self-preservation, and self-love, and how this plays into your relationship. Oh, and we're about to talk about one of the most important relationships that you're probably involved in, family. Because the concept of family is one of the most fundamental yet complex things in our lives that we try to navigate. It transcends more than just a biology that of the DNA that makes you. It involves everything from legal definitions to cultural, religious, connotations. It's a very deep concept that we all experience in some degree or another. So we're going to dive deep into the realm of that emotional connection and shared experience and the mutual support that family is supposed to mean. Yet, even with saying that, I'm going to put out there to have people think about, is family just about blood? Is blood thicker than water? You've heard that before. Or is it something that can be forged from bonds that come from people who are maybe not biologically related to you, but they have shown you loyalty, unwavering presence in your life? The bond that you have is a choice that you make with them. That's what we're going to talk about. Because remember, this is the podcast that likes to pull back that veil of self-doubt and sabotage that we so often employ in our lives, very unintentionally in many cases. Because I want to take these topics, which are very important topics to your mental wellness, and speak to them from a fresh and forward-thinking perspective. Because you're never going to grow and change or get to be where you want to be in your life unless you're willing to get a little uncomfortable, to get comfortable. And this is what the podcast is meant to do, to help you explore those areas where you need to do the work. So if you are a returning listener or viewer, thank you. I always appreciate the support. As I say, take this next 30, 40, 60 minutes, however long this podcast lasts today, and grab a space for yourself, the beverage of your choice, coffee, tea, a glass of wine, whatever is going to help you to kind of enjoy and be in this space for yourself. And I always say, grab maybe a pencil, pen, paper, and jot down something that may pop up, because it's probably something worth reflecting on down the road. On top of that, though, if you are a first-time listener or viewer, welcome. And I always say, just buckle up for safety, because occasionally it can be an unexpected bumpy ride, because I might just say something that makes you go, and it should. And if you find yourself saying, during any of this conversation, it means you might have some deeper self-reflection to do, because that's what the M.A.Y.A podcast is all about. So with that being said, we always have to do our basic housekeeping things. Make sure you subscribe and share my YouTube channel. It's at M.A.Y.A Speaks to You. And that's also the shared handle for all of my social media. So whether it's Facebook, IG, X, whatever it is, just follow me and you'll always know when there's a podcast coming up. Never fear if you've missed one of the podcasts, because you can find episodes pretty much on every podcast platform. You can go to Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audible, Spotify. Just search Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and you'll be able to find episodes. And of course, as you know, I do have the website, which is about to go under a very nice transformation. I'm kind of excited about what's coming with the website, but it has everything Maya there. So you can just go to www.mayaspeaks and then it's there. But there's two things on the website that I so really love. If there's a blog I have that's focused on menopause, because everyone knows that I am the poster child for menopause. So it's the Me on Pause blog. And I just bring up some key information and topics that I feel that women that are going through that menopausal transition, whether you are perimenopausal going through it, or you have reached that destination and you are postmenopausal, there's so much information out there that you are not aware of. But by the way, a ton of people are peddling you a lot of stuff. Buy this, buy that, it'll do that. And I'm going to tell you something, menopause is not one size fits all. And a lot of people are probably spending a lot of money on stuff that's going to do nothing for them, because you need to understand where you're at in that journey and how you're being affected to know what's actually going to work for you. So it's worth checking out my Me on Pause blog, which you can find on the website. And I have an inspirational blog where once a week I post one thought I just want you to digest as you work on growing, changing, and getting to that better version of yourself. Both of these blogs are posted every Wednesday. So it's just once a week that the information is there. So there are some key things that you can jump into. But after telling you all this, everybody, guess what? I've kind of made this even a little easier for you than I probably said in all that. You can actually just download the app, the Maya Experience, and you can get the blog, you can get all the podcast, everything right there in the palm of your hand. So to get the My Experience, pretty much it's available on iPhones as well as Androids. And all you have to do is go to the either Apple Store or you can go to the Amazon Store and you can download them both there. You just search the My Experience and you can download them. And it's absolutely free. It costs you nothing. So everything I just said, you can have in the palm of your hand. So you'll know when a blog is posted. You'll know when a podcast is either airing or coming, because it's right there all in the app. You can scan these QR codes right there for the Apple Store or the Amazon Store, and voila, you can download the app. Or I've actually dropped it into the comment section. So you can click on those links. See, I'm trying to make this easy as I'm trying to push you into downloading this app, right? But really, it's easier. It has everything right there and it's free. And this is the one thing that this free is a good thing. They often say, if it's free, what do you really get? In this case, I'm going to say you're going to get something good. So it's worth downloading. All right. With that being said, we've done our housekeeping. And as you know, we kick off every episode talking about it's toolbox time. That means I need for you to take out your Maya toolbox. And we always take out our emotional intelligence, which we know is that ability to manage both our own as well as understand our own emotions as well as others. Because if you're only understanding how you feel, and by the way, if you only care about how you feel, that might explain why you have some conflicts frequently in life, if you're not considering how other people might be impacted by a situation as much as you are, but differently. So emotional intelligence helps you to understand that, but then it also helps you to respond differently, because you're regulating your emotions based on not just feeling, but putting thinking and logic together to make sure your feelings are properly represented. All right, so we've done our toolbox. You know to take out your AI, and you might be asking me, Maya, normally we put something in the toolbox every single episode. So what are we putting in your toolbox today? Well, today we're putting family. Now that's interesting, because you kind of figure we're putting family in the toolbox. We are, because family can often be one of the most important and instrumental tools that you have in your life that you don't even understand. And after today's conversation, I hope that there'll be some great enlightenment in this, because this conversation, as I said, is building on the previous episodes. I talked about the economy of self, which I think was episode 87 or 86. Then we talked about self-preservation. That was 87. 88 was about self-love in your relationships and the importance of understanding it, but make sure that it's very front and center in every one of your relationships. And now we're putting the big one on the table, family. Because I'm going to tell you something. The reason that most people show up in therapy most of the time, and I've said this repeatedly, is usually for like 3 reasons. Relationship issues with partners or friends, family dynamics or issues, or work. because those three things, which are often three of the most important roles or hats that you wear in your life, impact your emotional and mental well being so much deeper than most people understand. But when you understand what family is and what it should not be, that might alone may help you to do some reevaluation of how you are allocating resources or those mental or emotional assets we talked about in the economy of self. Are you allocating a lot of your time, energy, love into something and you're not getting a return on investment? And that's worse because if it's family, the expected is there should be a return on investment. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of people who could raise their hands and tell you, I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of family. And we're going to talk about it and be transparent. And I'll be honest, people, this might hurt a little bit. It might. But this is the realest conversation we could possibly have because, as I said, people sit here and they ponder and they torture themselves about trying to figure out ways to stay present in a position, which is their family, that often is a detriment to them, to their overall mental well being. And that's not a hard reality to have. So let's jump into this episode because as we talk about, hey, it's a family affair. Or is it? Is your life really a family affair? And if it is, I hope it's a healthy one. We're going to talk about navigating those family dynamics. So, in this episode, remember, I always try to give you an idea of what we're going to build here and what takeaways should be. We're going to look at setting you on that journey to exploring your family dynamics and how, if it's healthy or unhealthy, we want to talk about that family unit for you. So, what we want to walk away with is knowing is because that family unit directly shapes every single one of us for better or for worse. Yeah, it's like a marriage. Family often is begot from what? Marriage. So we're going to talk about what is family. Let's get a clear understanding. Two, what are you rooted in when it comes to understanding your family and why family values matter? Those are the three things we're going to talk about in this episode. And I'm going to say something, it's going to be unsettling for some people. And that's what it's supposed to be. Because if you find yourself questioning anything, I want you to write it down, think about it, chew on it, and say, I might need to do a deeper dive into this because now I have to be honest with why maybe I'm struggling with so many things in my life. And I never really wanted to say it was family because guess what? We don't want to be too Freudian in our thinking about our childhoods shaping us, but we know that they do. So for many people, the initial understanding of family, it centers on that immediate idea of nuclear family, which is pretty much the parents and children, siblings, and nothing more. That's a traditional idea of what a nuclear family is. But mind you, there are cultural implications to this for many people because that idea of family can shift within a cultural dynamic and it could look more like a nuclear family in some cultures or really more of what some people would say is the extended family, which could then be mom, dad, grandparents, sometimes aunts, uncles. It's a bigger family unit because those are often cultures will say it takes a village to raise a child. And that village is often very that extended family, but also close friends that are looked at like family. Hence the conversation, is blood thicker than water? But we'll dive into that a bit down the road. So the traditional idea of family is usually that immediate idea, parents, kids, and sometimes grandparents. People might kind of sprinkle into that mix. But the key thing is, no matter what that group is, when it forms, it is our first social world experience that we have. And it provides you your early lessons in love, conflict resolution, belonging, communication, the list goes on. So when I say a healthy family is detrimental to your development as a child and how you will manifest what you took forward into your adulthood, it's a big deal that we often sometimes maybe we have minimized that it's just family. Just family should have a whole lot of value to you because what you were supposed to gather or learn from your family was key things that you carried into adulthood. So history and our traditions and our memories, these are the things that bond us to our family, whether it's good or bad. And when a family is healthy, distance nor disagreement will break that bond when it's healthy for reasons we'll discuss. So that's the initial idea of probably what family is. So let's break it apart more. I kind of talked about is, so what's family, Maya? Okay, I gave you that basic idea that we talked about that there could be the idea that it's nuclear, extended, or actually extended families are now being called web, which means grandparents, aunts, uncles, that kind of thing. There's blended families where, people get married and they bring their families together. So a man, woman, whoever gets married, and they have children from a previous relationship and they bring their kids into that relationship. It's called blended or AKA the Brady Bunch. that would be the first blended family that many of us became familiar with as kids because they were blended. Okay, so those are the basic types of families. What I didn't insert into that conversation was about maybe, okay, so friends. So fundamentally, the idea of family has already evolved past the idea of just being nuclear, traditional, extended, or blended, because families can now kind of come together in different ways. Marriage is one way. So a marriage may start a family, or a marriage may bring two families together. Adoption can bring children into a family. And sometimes just close emotional bonds to people that feel like family. Have you ever had that person in your life that you've called aunt or uncle or cousin and you're not related, but you've always known them to be that person? Because there's a close bond that that person has with your family. Because ultimately, they're providing some type of love, caring, or mutual support. So family functions are key. So I'll throw a little definition there so you can put in there. It's a social group that usually comprises two or more individuals that are related by blood, marriage, adoption, and sometimes close emotional bonds. They typically live together until maybe they age out of that role. But the key thing is they provide mutual support. And that specifically is, I usually will say the Webster's dictionary says, but in this case, I kind of went and gave you what is really like a Department of Human Services definition of how they personify family under their health resources and services administration page is how they chose to define family. And that makes sense by all facts. But here's the key thing I want people to think about when we talk about what is family. It doesn't matter to me what type of family that you have, whether it's nuclear, extended, AKA web, or blended. No matter what that unit is, what it looks like is important, because each person in your family unit contributes to the family's narrative, history, but more importantly, functionality. And every person in your family has a role. For instance, when you're born into the world, your parents are your key role providers, along with probably maybe grandparents in some cases, aunts, uncles. It depends. Sometimes even older siblings. But either way, how a family functions together in a healthy or unhealthy dynamic, each person is a key player in that. And children learn from the adults that are present with them. So, functionality, when we talk about family, this is what this conversation is all about. So now we've talked about what is family. Pick your poison on this. Blended, extended, I don't care what it is. That piece doesn't really matter, because whatever brings those things together, that is what becomes your family. Now, I will tell you this. If there's a sticking point in the functionality of the family because of the type, then that's something that has to be addressed. And when I say that, what could be a functionality issue in the type would perhaps be a blended family. Maybe you bring two families together and let's say maybe the siblings don't get along. Or even in a blended family, folks, the other parent who's not in the household, if there is another parent, is part of your child's life. That can create either functionality or full blown dysfunction. If the person that is that secondary ex of your partner isn't, if they don't have a good relationship. So even that dynamic can impact your family dynamic. So types can be impacted by outside forces very, very easily. So sometimes that layer has to pull back. So I'm going to say that your family unit doesn't matter as much unless there's something creating problems within it from the outside. But when we talk about the role of family values, this is key. Family values have a very, very specific purpose. And the thing about it is, most people don't take it seriously. If I was to ask most people, what are your family values? Not what do you value, but can you tell me unequivocally, my mother or my father stands firm on this? They're firm. My uncle or my aunt is firm on this. A lot of people can't even truly describe what their family values are, which within itself to me can be slightly like a problem. Because if you don't know what your family valued, then I would ask you, well, then where did you pick your values up from? And if you learned them along the way on your own as you matured, there's nothing wrong with that. But that means your trajectory into adulthood probably had some interesting or complicated experiences for you. So, the role of family values, functionality. They provide the structure and act as a guide to help people understand how to interact, especially during difficult times. But also, believe it or not, your family values help you to establish your identity. So if you came from a family of people that, let's say, honestly, were very hard workers, then work ethic might be a strong family value for you. If you came from a family that highly valued spirituality and religion, then faith might be a strong family value for you. That's where we talk about understanding how we can help to establish your identity. Then you say, when we talk about kids, especially, family values teach children how to pretty much understand how to interact with people, how to have self esteem, understand right from wrong. But more importantly, watching healthy family values helps us to understand how to regulate our emotions better. So, why I say that is if you come from a family of people who like to argue and yell and scream, chances are you're going to be the exact same person unless you figured out that you have no interest in being the person in the family who keeps yelling and screaming and can't communicate. Those type of traits are passed on, poor communication traits, because that's how that family interacts. Three, it impacts how you move in relationships. So when you have shared healthy values, that fosters stronger, more supportive, and healthier relationships in your life in childhood, but especially within adulthood. So we have takeaways that we learn so much from our parents, our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles, whoever those people that were front and center in your life that became, I would say, your family unit, your caregiver. And to be honest, for some people, it was someone outside the family. And that felt more like family to them. Hence, we talk about the idea of family and kinship can be bigger than the idea of just blood. Because some people have shared, they have gotten more from people that they are not related to than the people that they are. So, hence, family then can evolve into it is what you make it. And that's what's important. So, the role of family values, it teaches you how things should function in your life. It helps you to develop a self esteem, understanding right from wrong, and how to regulate your emotions. And more importantly, it helps you to understand the importance of healthy relationships. Those are key roles of family values. So, I could probably give you a list of what family values are, but I will tell you this, there are some core family values that are out there. And the key thing is, a lot of people will tell you that respect is big within families, honor and integrity, acting with sincerity, truthfulness, and fairness, acting with responsibility, empathy, and kindness, understanding what loyalty is, and hard work and generosity and service. These are all key elements that as we grew up that we should have picked up and learned from our parents. Generosity and service, because service means the act of doing for others and not being selfish all the time and thinking things are about you. Because remember, we are often born into the world as children very selfish. Children do not understand dynamics of what family is, what it means to share. So hence they learn all of these fine traits and qualities from their family, mainly parents or whoever was front and center and present in raising them. So there is a extreme importance in understanding that you come into this world a blank slate. What is placed upon your slate is written there by your family. And you have to ask yourself, was loyalty written on that board for me? Was understanding what generosity and service meant? Was the importance of honesty and respect passed on? And it's interesting because even in some dysfunctional families, can I just tell you something that's interesting? That some of these values will surface. One value that will surface often, even in dysfunction, but often misrepresented, is respect. You should respect me because I am your mother. I am your father, despite the fact that may not be moving in a way that is expected of the standard of what a good parent is supposed to do. But because they brought you into this world, you have some people that feel they command respect for that only that reason, if nothing else. I am here to tell you that is not a reason alone for someone to command your respect, especially if they don't give it to you, because it's easy to give respect when you understand what respect is. So, even within dysfunction, these values can be turned inside out to be manipulated and self serving for those who are creating dysfunction in your life. And it's important to be able to see that because the key thing is how family values are taught is they're reinforced a couple ways through modeling behavior, which means parents and caregivers, they demonstrate to you how to behave. You are that blank slate, and they are writing the things that you should learn that you're going to carry forward as you grow, and you're going to evolve and grow and mature. And those concepts they teach you are going to become broader and sometimes deeper. So we learn because we watch what our parents have done. So, hence, if you're really poor at finances, I would ask you a question. Is that a family value, poor financing? Like a lack of understanding it? Did you find your parents weren't good with money? So hence they didn't teach you about money. So you have a lot of the same poor behaviors when it comes to finances because you didn't learn how to be a person who managed money better. Open communication or just good or healthy communication is how family values are taught. This is why you discuss the why behind rules and decisions. See, and this is probably a newer concept. I think newer parents are beginning to treat their kids not necessarily always as we're equals, but I am the parent, you're the child, but I do respect and I will hear and see you. So we're beginning to move away from the idea that children are meant to be seen and not heard, which is a very negative thing. I'm a product of that era, and I have to say that I don't feel I was fully like put in that position. I do believe that I was given a voice, but I was taught respect. Like there was a time when I should be speaking and be seen and I should know my place. I'm going to say that I don't think those things were wrong when I was taught that, understanding my role or my place in certain situations. And I carried those things forward as an adult. It helped me to understand that is a situation that perhaps I should not be inserting myself. It's not appropriate. Whereas this is. Children learn those types of skill sets from their parents. So, learning how to communicate. So, children's, they cannot become children. That was really bad. I put an S on children's and it's already plural. Anyways, but children, realistically, they cannot learn to communicate if their parents don't really teach them how to. So all you do, if you yell and you scream at your child, you're not teaching them how to understand how to resolve conflict. It's often going to turn into, I'm afraid to make a mistake, or they don't want to tell you anything because they feel that there is no feedback. There's only criticism. And the art of communication is understanding that there can be, you know, feedback, which may be critical, but it teaches you to grow and to learn. Whereas criticism leads with pointing out something wrong, but not really in a positive way and making a person leave feeling like there's something wrong and they're not good enough. Whereas feedback is meant to show you did something wrong, but then teach you how to grow. So if you didn't learn how to communicate as a child, that tends to flow over into all your relationships that you don't know how to be a good communicator. But understanding boundaries and rules and regulations, not that are just inserted without explanation, because good communicators will always explain why they're expressing what they are to you. And that's something that you should learn in childhood. Let's be honest, many of us didn't, because this mindset wasn't really there when many of our parents were parenting us. Another big piece is establishing tradition and rituals. That's a big part about family values. So it might be that we get together and we do this. Like I have a client I see that they've been doing this family tradition where they go to this cabin in Michigan every year, and the entire family gets together and they bring their kids. And there's about 15 or 20 of them that get together. And they have this tradition where they go to this beach that's there and they see the sunset. And it's just a simple family thing they've done, but it's how they've created that time in special memories. They value that time they spend. They've created a tradition. So it could be something from how your grandmother cooked something. It's a ritual, a tradition that was passed on. That's what family is. That's where our identity comes from, learning those things. But a big part also of family values that is missing, and many people struggle with it, is setting boundaries. Because a lot of families struggle with boundaries. A lot of families can be very enmeshed, very close, and they often cross over lines and they don't know when this is probably a place where you should stop. Because boundary setting in families is usually not very good. And consistency, learning that you show up and what you say and what you do should match. And that's something that you would have been taught as a child because you would have seen that from your parents about consistency and honesty. That is the importance of family value that can never be discounted. So if you take a takeaway when I talk about what is family, ultimately, a healthy family, and this is an acronym that I have created to make you think through this podcast. A healthy family is forever and always making incredible life years. It does not mean that there's not going to be problems or issues. But remember, I said, when you have good family values and you have an established communication and boundaries and all these things we talk about, working through challenging times is easier because you know how to communicate and you understand each other and you respect one another. Because Healthy families provide these things to you: emotional and mental stability, stronger self-concept, healthier relationships, and it helps you to do better in difficult times. If you find that you do well in these situations, I'm going to tell you it's not about having a perfect family, but I feel like you had a family that gave you a foundation that you could build up on. And even if you found there were times or places in your life that you had deficiencies, you had the tools that the family provided to you to be ever to push through and make those changes. So we talked about healthy family, forever always making incredible life years. I want you to think about that, chew on it, and say to yourself, I feel like that's my family. That's my family. I feel like that's how we roll. I feel like that's how we get down. We may have our problems. We may not always see eye to eye, but at the end of the day, what we often are able to do is come back together and discuss things in a healthy way. And we don't allow that to break down the bond of the family we have. We're going to take a quick break. And before we do, I want to share something that resurfaced for me in watching TV. And I said, gosh, I forgot about that. But it seemed more powerful to me now than it was when I read it as a kid. I think everybody knows Winnie the Pooh, right? You read the books. You know Winnie, you know Winnie, you know Piglet. And then one of the books, Piglet says to Winnie, how do you spell love? And Winnie said, you don't spell it, you feel it. That's what family is. You feel the love. And I would say to anybody, if you feel you're in a family and you don't feel the love, there's something to be said about that. And there's some deep soul searching that you might need to do to figure out why you don't feel the love. Everybody, this is episode 89 of the M.A.Y.A podcast, My Ambition, Your Ambition. It's a family affair, or is it? Navigating family dynamics. It's never easy, but here's the thing. Once you understand it better, how you choose to move through it can improve your overall emotional and mental well-being. Let's take that commercial break. We'll be right back. And we'll talk about, well, what does it look like when it's unhealthy? And what do you do with it? We'll be right back.
Compassion, noun. Sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. We're all born with it. It's in us. Don't believe me? When you hear a baby cry, something pulls at you. You want to ease that pain. You want to soothe that hurt. No one had to teach you that. It's called compassion, and it's in you. However, at some point you turned it off when it came to me.
Me. The cries of my soul have gone unheard, but today, you will hear me.
My heart has wailed a melody loud enough to shatter your ears, and you ignored me. But this week, you will hear me.
This body has beat the drums of anguish, only to be silenced. But this month, you will hear me.
This year,
This decade,
This century,
I will be heard, and
you will be the one to hear me.
and when I am finally heard,
Show compassion.
show compassion.
show compassion.
Remember, it's in you.
You've served our country and made us proud. Many of you have come home, continue to lead, and look out for one another. So it's important we all learn the 5 signs of emotional suffering. If you or someone you know is experiencing one or more of these signs, reach out, connect, offer to help.
Hey, what's the matter?
In or out of uniform, we can help our families and nation stay strong. Visit changedirection.org.
I can't breathe. I have migraines, numbness, weight loss. I live with it every day. The illness that I'm suffering from is an anxiety disorder, and it deserves to be treated like any other illness. But it's not.
Everybody, welcome back to episode 89 of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. It's a family affair, or is it? Navigating family dynamics. And as I said, this is one of the number one reasons people sit in therapy, legitimately, is struggling to figure out how to navigate their family dynamics, especially when they're toxic. I don't get people sitting on my couch because they have a healthy family. Let's be honest. People show up in therapy because forces in their life are really putting them in a space where they're struggling emotionally and mentally. Sometimes that those forces are now pushing them off a financial edge because they think they can save everybody. So it's just different reasons. But people sit in therapy because of family and or relationships dynamics. And family is the biggest tool you have. That's why I said it is the tool we're putting in the toolbox today, because I don't think people look at it that way. But when you fail to get the tools that you need from your family, chances are you're doing that work in your adulthood, or you're living a life that may be feeling very unfulfilled. You may be feeling stuck. There could be a host of reasons because you didn't get certain things that you needed to be able to go to the next level. I'm going to tell you something I hear frequently with young adults, and I kind of get a little bit of a giggle out of it, just a little bit. They'll say, I can't adult. I don't know how to adult. You know what? If you're watching the show, do me a favor. And there's some people who are watching live. And if you happen to be an older individual, tell me what you think it means to adult. Because when people say, my 20-somethings will say, I wasn't taught how to adult. I don't know how to do this. It's too hard. And I said, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Adulting doesn't come with a manual, as life does not. And two, none of us were taught that necessarily. Now, some of us might have been given better tools to do it better, but there was nothing, like there wasn't this crash course. There wasn't this manual that said, here's how you adult. It's going to be foolproof. No, adulting is about having experiences that you learn from and you grow and you move forward. It's pretty much that simple. It's not difficult. It's the life experiences that are going to shape you through it. It's what you do with those experiences. So, family is your biggest tool. And what those young adults do say to me when they struggle with adulting is they felt they were not taught it from their parents. I would say this dynamic issue, family values, are the very things, are the tools that they needed, but they probably weren't presented in a way that they understood they were being given the tools. Because I have family, people that I see, and they talk about their families, and I'm like, there are decent family values here. You were given tools. You just didn't recognize what they were. Perhaps you were looking for something different. And they're a little baffled by it because they were. They're like, oh, so you're saying that like work ethic and honesty and loyalty, those things, those are like adulting tools? And I'm like, well, yeah. Like, how do you think you're going to move through life if you don't understand what loyalty means to give to others, as well as what it should look like for you? Trust, respect. What does that look like for you? What do you need from other people? Those are the things that you learn that you apply to adulting. And all of a sudden, it doesn't feel like rocket science anymore. But we talked about the acronym I created for healthy family. I'll put it up there again. A healthy family is forever always making incredible life years. What that does not mean is that there's not adversity, there's not challenges, there's not obstacles. There are. Every family has it. It's how you move together as a family unit that makes a difference. And when you have a healthy family, remember, I said these are the things you should get from it. Emotional and mental stability, not perfection, stability, people. 2, stronger sense of self, because you learn your identity from your family. 3, healthier relationships. You saw healthy relationships, or you saw people be able to work through conflict resolution, and you understand how to apply that when you are faced with it. And you understand how to move through crisis or difficult times. I will warn you on this when we talk about families. If you are thinking about getting married, or you are married and you wonder why you have friction, I would go back when I do couples or marriage counseling with people. I will ask them, can you describe your family values to me? Because I want to see how different these people's values were opposite as families, or were they the same? And if that's why they're having some friction and how they're able to move in their relationship. Because remember, if you watch and you learn it, there's going to be a high probability as an adult, you're going to attempt to emulate it. You're going to attempt to emulate it, even if it's maybe not right because you don't know. So we've talked about what healthy and functional families should look like. So let's jump into the other side of, well, how do you evaluate your family functionality? Is your family healthy or unhealthy? So the first part should give you, you should be able to maybe give your family a grade. What would you give your family as a grade right now? A, pretty top notch. We do pretty well. You know, we have our hiccups, but I feel like the way we move as a family, we're supportive, we're loving. I feel like they legitimately are there for me. So hence, when something goes down, we figure it out because we are family. That's what the song was about, right? But if you don't find yourself saying that, you're like, well, we do okay, but we're probably a B. We have those moments where we struggle. And by the way, even in every functional, healthy family, there's going to be a little bit of dysfunction. There's somebody moving in your family unit that is probably dysfunctional. And often that dysfunctional person is the wave in the family. They're the person that creates the issues that other people have to figure out how to navigate so that the entire family is not going to be impacted, negatively impacted by this one person's moves. And it's interesting because believe it or not, one person in your family who is toxic can be highly disruptive to the family flow. Because what I have found it with toxic people in families is they work extra hard to divide and conquer their family. Most people who are unhappy and bitter, if they can't be happy, they want everybody else to suffer. Goes the old saying, misery enjoys company. So I'm going to say when you pinpoint that person in your family, whether it's blood or not, and you see the way they're moving is causing dissension in your family, you can make the decision to say, you know, I'm going to distance myself from that person because I feel they're creating, they want us to argue. They want us to fight. They don't want us to be happy as a family because something happened to them, and opposed to us coming together and working on it and solving the problem, they rather us all sit in discontent and not be happy. And hence, your family becomes broken down because of that. Maybe one or two people who might be dysfunctional. So I'm going to say this again. You could come from a healthy family unit, but have that one or two people in there that's dysfunctional, and they work real hard to create grief in your family. See it and deal with it. Because if your family matters to you, you won't let that one person sink the entire boat. Be mindful of it. And by the way, it won't be easy. So I asked that question. Well, if you know the healthy functional family is super supportive, then what does the unhealthy family look like? Well, the unhealthy family and acronym is pretty much this. It is the family that fights, always makes issues, and it lasts years. Dysfunctional families rarely ever are able to function in a way that doesn't have conflict constantly. There's always bickering, arguing, rumors. There's always something going on. People often don't get together, they're just fragmented. So, if a healthy family is a compass for what you should be doing, a toxic one is a shipwreck. So, pretty much, a healthy family is an anchor when needed. An unhealthy family is going to sink your boat. That's the difference between the two. And that's why these acronyms I created. I always say that an unhealthy family dynamic is like having sepsis. It creates this emotional instability. And sepsis is when you have inflammation in your body. It's due to there's toxins in your body. And eventually, if you don't treat the sepsis that gets into your bloodstream, ultimately you can have organs shut down and it could lead to death. Septic. When people become septic, they can die from it. And what people don't understand is when you have those toxic pieces in your family, what it does to your family's emotional and mental well-being, they are sepsis. They do take away the emotional stability. And eventually, families can die if people are not aware of the fact that there are things within the family system that's killing it. And that's a hard thing to think about. Like, we have a person that's toxic in our family. What do we do with this? Because we want to be happy. We'd like to have them as part of the family, but they don't bring anything to the table except for negativity and toxicity. And we're to the point where we're just fed up and we can't do it anymore. That's when it's about making hard choices. And a lot of people struggle about when they maybe either need to cut someone out, put them in timeout, or as my grandma would say, feed them with a long handle spoon. I'm going to keep you at a distance. I'll be cordial, I'll be nice, but I'm not going to let you be too involved in my life because I realize the chaos you like to bring, and I refuse to allow you to create a storm in my life and make my calm ocean now tumultuous. I work to keep peace and calm because that's what healthy families should do. So, now that I told you what the unhealthy acronym is, let's talk about where these particular family units fall short. Where we talked about where healthy families, what they do well, here's pretty much what unhealthy families do. One, they literally make communication a battlefield. It means it's impossible to have a healthy conversation when the family dynamic is unhealthy and it's toxic. Every situation, even when it needs to be discussed, turns into an argument, a confrontation. Nothing can be discussed in a balanced and healthy way because everybody gets in their feelings and they get defensive. And often they miss the whole point of what the conversation should be about because often in toxic families, know this, people within it often make it about themselves. Everything is about them, not about the issue at hand. Think long and hard on that. Is that person in your life, in that friendship, in your family, that you bring a topic to the conversation that directly is impacting you or someone else, and that person turns the conversation and makes it about themselves? That's a red flag because that's hard to communicate with someone who can't step back and understand. Remember, good family, healthy families about support and love and being able to communicate. So the first thing is communication's a battlefield. Everything turns into a fight or argument. Matter of fact, when a conversation is put on the table, people come out with gloves out. Gloves out. Not even trying to like just be calm and just talk about it. They come in on the defense. No offense, just defense. Good communication, people, is going to have offense. It doesn't mean that defense doesn't exist, but you know how to play offense in the game. People who want to be negative only have defense. They have no offense. Two, issues last forever. You got that family issue, people get mad at each other. And literally, I've heard people say, I haven't talked to my father in 10 years. And I think that is so sad because usually the issue that was brought up should never have warned that they shouldn't have talked for 10 years. I don't understand that. Something can matter more to you than the relationship you would have with your child or your parent. But I'm not angry with them because their reason for standing their ground makes sense. But literally, this person, their father, dug their heel in and they didn't talk for 10 years. And the thing is, once they talked about it, it was resolved and made in good sense. But they lost 10 years of being together because people didn't know how to put their pride aside, being prideful and refusing to take accountability into the mix. Many reasons why people can't see eye to eye. Their pride, and they don't want to be accountable or responsible for things. So, 3, the lack of core values. I'm going to tell you something. If I ask you what your family core values and you can't really give me any, that means those things weren't imprinted upon you. Whereas some people will tell you, oh, work ethic is big in my family, honesty, respect is huge. We have a big thing about, church and spirituality and faith in our family is a pillar. They can tell you. I don't need 10 or 15, but if you can't tell me 1 or 2, and I always ask people, what are your values and where did you get them from? And if they don't know, I'm like, well, that's the start of kind of why you struggle with your identity. Because remember, you are born into the world as a blank slate, and the people that take care of you write on it. Now, what you choose to leave on that board is up to you. So if you don't know who you are, chances are no one poured those things into you as a child. 4, we talk about that emotional sepsis. I coined that term for myself, that when people are toxic, literally it affects your mood, maybe how you move day to day, how you may be interacting with the rest of your family, how you behave at work, because when you're emotionally and mentally not in a good space, it's going to permeate throughout the rest of your life. So you know that person who comes to work and they're pissed off at home and they bring it to work, and you'll say, check it at the door because it's work. And people often have a hard time compartmentalizing those things for themselves because the emotion can be strong, because family is the one thing I'll tell you that can often dig deeper for most people than anything else in this world. it can get under their skin. They can handle a lot of things, but it comes to family, and it's the one thing they struggle to be able to navigate and keep their cool with. So just know, if you got toxicity coming from mom, dad, sister, brother, you got to ask yourself, how much of this do I keep allowing? Because if you find it's legitimately impacting you, you got to ask yourself, am I valuing their overall emotional and mental health more than my own? I'm afraid to say something about how they talk to me or what they do because it's going to make them mad. Okay, so you're afraid to make them mad, but you're going to accept the fact that you feel disrespected because clearly they don't respect you enough to not talk to you that way. Emotional sepsis, if it's present, you got to ask yourself why you're allowing. You wouldn't allow it in your real health because your body can't sustain it. Ask yourself why you're allowing those toxic people to remain just because you're related. And 5, it's just unwavering negativity. Like, you feel if you go to a family event, you can't wait to leave. Matter of fact, you dread going to a family event. You hate the phone rings and you see a person's name and you cringe. Those are all bad things. It's like, why do you feel that way when that person's name shows up on your phone? You should ask yourself, if I feel that way, why am I entertaining or giving them the space to be in my life if I really don't feel that I value them that way? Because they're bringing something to my life I don't wish to have. So if you find you can identify with too many of these things scrolling down the bottom of the screen, you got to ask yourself, perhaps my family is a bit more unhealthy than I realized. Maybe they don't even realize that they're unhealthy. So we unpack the idea of what are those tenets of what an unhealthy family looks like. Well, I kind of dove into this a bit as we wrap this up. How does it impact your overall mental wellness? To be honest, people, it's pretty straightforward and we've touched on it a bit. This is the simple takeaway of it all. Because when you don't take care of yourself and when you allow other people to not respect and take care of you, the bottom line is that 1, you weaken your mental and emotional health, and it's stress, and it manifests itself often in physical symptoms. I have a person who just had to go to the hospital and was hospitalized for 2 days because her stress level was so high at home because she's getting no support. She's working overtime. She's buried in financial things. And she has other people who are allegedly family in her life who are spending time in her home and not trying to support or see that she is struggling. It's flat toxic. It's flat toxic. So she is emotionally and mentally weakened. She also has very impaired decision making. And many people, when they struggle with their family, they waver on their decision making because often we have been taught to put family first and ourselves second. That only makes sense if that family is balanced and healthy. But if you are putting toxic people before yourself, I would ask you why. That's impaired decision making. And I'm going to tell you to go back to some former episodes, 86, 87, and 88, because it will tell you why that toxic decision making is not for you. And of course, there's relational breakdown in almost all your relationships when you have poor family dynamics. You struggle in all your relationships. You find your romantic relationships aren't well because, let's say, if you're emulating what you saw mom or dad do, that might not be the best place or the best thing. And you're just bringing negative energy into your relationships and not healthy things. You got to ask yourself, am I acting like that? Has anyone not ever said to their spouse, if they displayed, or a partner, let's say, not a trait that's undesirable, and they say, you're acting like your mother, or, you're acting like your father, and you get offended? Ask yourself why you got offended that they said that to you. Or if your sibling says to you, you're acting just like dad, you're acting just like mom. That's what they do. They don't listen. They're this and this. They're telling you something. They're actually echoing to you what your family dynamics are like. Mom and dad don't listen. All they do is argue. You're confrontational. They're echoing something to you. But if you're on the defense, you don't hear it. But on the offense, you can steal that information and make something of it. Like, am I really like that? Let me go back and think about it, because that's not who I want to be. That's key. So relational breakdown happens pretty much throughout almost all your relationships. And you're going to have insecurity and emotional strain. But the key thing is, often you lack identity and structure. And many of the people that I have who sit in therapy who have a lot of family dynamic issues that are difficult or complicated, toxic, dysfunctional, whatever, one of the main things they sit in those sessions is they're struggling to find their identity, their esteem, and their worth. Because do you not know that's where we get it from? So if someone told you were stupid your whole life and you'll never be anything, if you did, you beat the odds because no one was pouring positively into you. And I say, stand in this moment 10 toes down. If you watch this podcast and you feel that you had people in your life who sold you short, who didn't believe in you, but all of a sudden now you're in a better place and they can be more present and kind, don't forget that, because that means you did the work to overcome all those people when you were growing up who told you you would amount to nothing. And if you're still connected to those people, I would say you have empathy and compassion beyond the many other people, and I do not have, and don't plan on having, by the way, because I have a limit of what I think is acceptable when people are abusive, even if I'm related to you. I will not accept the abuse because I expect more of you because you are supposed to love me more. I'll say it again before we wrap it up. Live in Dr. Seuss and Winnie the Pooh's world. As Piglet said to Winnie the Pooh, how do you spell love? And Winnie said, you don't. You do it. You feel it. And if you don't feel it, you didn't get it. And stop trying to convince yourself love has existed if it never was there. And that's the hard reality of when we have unhealthy and dysfunctional families. But again, come to therapy, talk to someone, do some health books, do some more podcasts, whatever is going to help you to kind of grow. Because here's the thing, in essence, the presence of an unhealthy or toxic family dynamic can have a severe negative impact on people in childhood, but that carries over into your developmental pieces, and it's highly disruptive, and it corrupts the very foundation that a healthy family value is supposed to give you, that you're supposed to be building up and upon and carrying forward into adulthood, into your family and your relationship. So I would say, if you have identified that you come from a dysfunctional family and you have a family, break the generational traumas, break the generational behaviors, and break those generational bonds that only pass toxicity forward, because you have a right to do it, because you are now the architect of your present and your future, and nobody can change that. All right, everybody. As always, thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. We have so many new listeners. I picked up some listeners. Now I was looking, there's some listeners out of Egypt. There's some listeners out of Poland and England. We even got California, Texas, South Dakota. Lots of new listeners. So I do appreciate everyone sharing the podcast. I hope you get takeaways from it, because the whole purpose is to help you identify your ambitions and harness that motivation to help you to acquire the success and satisfaction that you seek in your everyday life. So everybody remember, of course, as I said earlier in the show, you can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audible, Spotify. Pretty much, if it's a podcast platform, you probably can find me. If not, let me know, and I can make sure I get my podcast there. You can always just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and you'll find it there. Of course, you can always subscribe to my YouTube channel, M.A.Y.A Speaks to You, and you're going to know when upcoming podcasts are coming up. It'll give you alerts, and it's also the same handle as Facebook, Instagram, and X. Just like and subscribe and share at M.A.Y.A Speaks to You. Of course, for all things M.A.Y.A, you can just go to my website, maya-speaks.com, and everything is there. And of course, my two blogs I have there, the Me on Pause blog, which is about menopause, and I have an inspirational blog. I will tell you, if you are going through the menopausal transition, and fellas, if you know someone who is, check out the blog. I'm going to tell you why. Because right now, menopause is a trending hot topic, and women are getting a lot of products thrown at them and very little information. And I want to make you an informed person, because there are 60 symptoms that are tied to menopause that most women have no idea. And I'll be honest, a lot of healthcare providers don't take it as serious as they should. And you could be suffering from things that very easily could just be related to your menopausal transition and could be easily treated. But if no one wants to listen or hear or see you, you still suffer in a way that you don't have to. So fellas and ladies, check out that, and check out the inspirational blog. They're both posted on Wednesdays, once a week. One thought inspirational for you to chew on, and one thing about menopause, if it applies, great, you can research and go from there. So those are all the ways that you can stay connected to the show. But of course, I've made it a lot easier now. I'm going to give you a call to action, like really quickly here. If you just actually download the M.A.Y.A app, right there, you just go to the Apple Store or the Amazon Store for my Android people. You download the app. It's free. And then everything M.A.Y.A, from the blogs to the podcast, are right there in the palm of your hand, and you have it on the go, and you don't have to do anything else. So go ahead. It's free. Download it. Like I said, from the Apple Store, you can scan this QR code, or you can scan the Amazon Store QR code, and voila, right there, you got M.A.Y.A on the go. And if I've become your preferred podcast of choice, fantastic. I appreciate that. All right, everybody. That's it. This is the end. So until next time, as I always say, remember, your present is your past and your future is no more. So live every day to the fullest. Everybody be well, stay safe. And always in my eyes, when you tune into my podcast, I appreciate your support. I think you're amazing because you're trying to do some kind of work on yourself. And I fully appreciate that, everybody. Okay, until next time, have a good one.
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.